September 1937, Germany. A nun named Clara wakes up in the middle of the night to violent knocking on her convent room door. It was 10 minutes past midnight. When the knocking stopped, absolute silence filled the corridor as if no one had ever been there. Clara went back to sleep praying for the souls in purgatory. But what she didn't know was that very night, she would receive a message from beyond, a letter written by her old friend Anne, who had died days earlier in a car accident. And this letter did not ask for prayers. It asked for exactly the opposite. Clara, do not pray for me. I am condemned. Clara and Anne met in 1933 at the workplace where Clara had been working for 6 months. Clara was 23 years old, Catholic, reserved and discreet. She dreamed of becoming a nun. Anne was her complete opposite, extravagant, charismatic, showing little interest in religion. While Clara cultivated a life of prayer, Anne only thought about marrying Henrico and having lots of money. The friendship between them was built gradually. Clara helped Anne with work on several occasions, and that's what brought them closer. But when Anne finally got married, the distance between them grew. They lost contact. They never saw each other again. 4 years later, Clara was already in the convent, living out her religious vocation. Then, in September 1937, she received an unexpected letter from her mother. Anne had died. A car accident. The collision was violent and took her life instantly. According to the letter, she probably didn't suffer. But this news brought no peace to Clara's heart. On the contrary, she became deeply troubled, wondering if Anne had had time to repent to save her soul. Moved by this anguish, Clara spent the entire day praying for her friend. But something strange happened. Throughout that day, she felt a growing uneasiness, and at night, she could barely sleep. That's when the violent knocking on the door woke her up. 10 minutes past midnight. Clara thought about getting up, but the knocking stopped. No sound, no footsteps, as if nothing had happened. Clara thought it might just be her imagination, affected by Anne's death. She went back to praying for the souls in purgatory and, exhausted, fell asleep again. And then came the dream, a dream so real, so vivid, that Clara would never forget it. In the dream, it was 6 o'clock in the morning. Clara opened her room door to go to the chapel. As she took her first step, her foot hit something on the floor. They were sheets of paper, scattered as if someone had left them there on purpose. She bent down, picked up the sheets, and screamed. She immediately recognized Anne's handwriting. It was a letter, and it began in a terrifying way. "Clara, do not pray for me." Clara read with a heavy heart. Anne explained that she was condemned and that divine justice had forced her to write that letter. It wasn't out of friendship, Anne warned. In hell, we love no one anymore. In truth, I would also like to see you here, where I have come to stay forever. Anne began to tell her story. She revealed that her parents didn't want her conception. It was an accident, a misfortune, in the words she herself used. When the family moved from the countryside to the city, they lost contact with the church. They made friends with people disconnected from religion. Her parents' marriage was just a formality, a few drops of holy water sufficient only to drag her mother to Sunday Mass, very rarely throughout the year. Anne never learned to pray properly. Her father, before her first communion, told her, "Make sure, Anita, that you get a beautiful dress. The rest is nonsense." Anne confessed that she was already possessed by worldly pleasures when she made her first communion at age 12. She didn't take the sacrament seriously. Then Anne revealed something terrible. On the night her father died of apoplexy, she heard a mysterious voice in the room asking 3 times, "What will happen if your father dies?" Anne, filled with rage over the fights and her father's drinking, answered, "Well then, it's what he deserves. Let him die." The next morning they found her father dead. Anne explained that that voice was from a demon. She wrote, "The demon and his helpers wander the earth without being suspected. Only many prayers and sacrifices would have been able to snatch me from him. And then came the most important teaching of the letter. All those in hell did not pray or did not pray enough. Prayer is the first step toward God. Praying is the easiest thing one can do on earth. God has linked salvation to precisely this ease. Anne confessed that in the last years of her life, she simply stopped praying. God called to her sometimes. She felt an inexplicable nostalgia when she entered a church, but worldly pleasure always poured like a torrent over these graces. Before the wedding, she confessed and received communion, but it was just a formality. Her husband thought like her. Anne refused to have children. She preferred dresses, fine furniture, and car rides. It was a year of earthly pleasures between the wedding and her sudden death. But Anne was never truly happy. "Something always gnawed at my soul," she wrote. Her religion was at its end. She visited cathedrals only for their artistic value. She criticized religious people, mocked the bells calling to Mass, said it was all just about money. And then came that fatal Sunday, a radiant day. Anne felt well like rarely before, but a sinister premonition accompanied her. That morning, an inexplicable idea arose in her. To go to Mass one more time. It sounded like a request, she wrote, but she cut off the idea with a decided no. With this, I must end it definitively. I take upon myself all the consequences. On the return trip, the car was blinded by the light of another automobile. Her husband lost control. Anne felt a crushing pain, and she lost consciousness. If stories like this touch your faith and make you reflect on eternity, subscribe to the channel. This way, you help us continue spreading the truths of our faith and the revelations that show us the seriousness of eternal salvation. Anne described what happened next. I awakened from the darkness at the moment of my death. I suddenly found myself enveloped in blinding light. I saw my soul. I saw the wasted graces, from youth to my last no given to God. It was not even possible for me to remain in the sight of God. Only one thing remained for me: escape. My soul threw itself away from that horrible sight. This was the particular judgment. The invisible judge spoke, "Depart." Then my soul fell like a sulfuric shadow into the place of eternal torment. Anne ended the letter explaining hell. The fire here burns without consuming. Our greatest torment consists in knowing that we will never see God. Condemned Catholics suffer more than those of other beliefs, because they wasted more light and more graces. Those who knew more suffer more. Clara recounts that the last lines of the letter were so crooked that she could barely read them. When she finally finished reading the last sentence, the entire letter turned to ash in her hands. And then she heard the chapel bells ringing the Angelus prayer. Clara woke up, still frightened, wondering if it had been just a dream. But Clara never forgot what she read in that letter. And after she died, they found this testimony that she herself had written and left as an account of something supernatural that she experienced in that memorable year of 1937. It's important to clarify that this story has not been officially validated or recognized as an approved private revelation by the Catholic Church. The Archdiocese at the time authorized its dissemination as a source of spiritual reflection, but not as dogmatic truth. Therefore, receive this account with faith and discernment, not as absolute certainty about someone's eternal destiny which only God knows, but as a profound invitation to examination of conscience and conversion. The story of Anne and Clara reminds us of three truths that Catholic doctrine itself already teaches. Prayer is the first step toward God and the easiest thing we can do on earth. Salvation is linked to our response to divine graces, and each no that we give to God distances us a little more from the only source of eternal happiness. May this story make us pray with more fervor, live with more awareness of eternity, and never, ever postpone our conversion to tomorrow.